Hello, everybody. I thought it was time that I did a new settings video for Trend Trader. Settings video that you already have access to. Here's an older one. It doesn't cover all the latest features of Trend Trader, so we definitely needed a new one. So this is it. Let me just share my screen. Oh, it's not sharing much of my screen. Okay, that'll do. Okay, so a few things I want to touch on. I'm mostly just going to go through all the settings one by one for Trend Trader. But what I first want to say, though, is the settings you are looking at on the screen now are the default settings that the software has. It doesn't matter what chart you put this software onto. These are the settings that are going to, by default, be on there. These default settings suit the pound-yen pair. So these are my optimized settings that I personally use. These are the new settings for the mental health settings as well. So once you put the software on the chart, for pound-yen, you don't need to touch anything, basically. For all the other pairs, you will need to change most of these settings to the optimized settings that you wish to use. When you purchase the software, you will have also seen you would have been sent a picture of the mental health settings. And I will also share those mental health settings in this video again as well. Now, I'm just going to go through all these inputs one by one. The input license, that is your activation key that locks the software into one specific trading account. That's the security on the software, and that will also have been sent to you, most likely by email, along with the software file itself. Take profit, very self-explanatory. By default here, it's set at 1,700. That is 1,700 points. There are 10 points in a pip, so that is 170 pips that we're aiming for with profit. Stop loss, self-explanatory also. When we're working out how much risk we're going to use per trade, we need to have an order size, so that's the lot size of the trade. As you can see here on pound-yen, it's at 0.06. So down here in the open orders, we can see we currently have a pound-yen pair open, trade open, and is 0.06. So you need to make the lot size the right size. How you determine what lot size to use is whatever that is that will create the risk you want if you were to hit your stop loss. I know I didn't explain myself there very well, but in that playlist of videos that you would have received as well by email when you purchased, there is one in there about using a pip calculator to work out the lot size that you need. So in this case, if I was running a 2% risk per trade, this lot size, if the trade goes against me and I hit my stop loss at 130 pips, I will incur a 2% loss. So 2% of my account balance is what I would lose. So that's how you work out the risk, and look at that pip calculator to get more info on that. Profit lock 1 and first profit lock. These two work in conjunction together. And in the mental health settings picture, which I'll share here shortly, it will say something like 400 over 130. That will be the profit lock 1. I'll probably call that PL1, and that'll be 400 over 130. So that's how you enter it. The 400 would go in the profit lock 1, and the 130 goes in the first profit lock. Okay, so those two settings work together, and what it means is when that trade gets into 400 points or 40 pips of profit, it's going to move the stop loss line from here to here. So instead of taking a 130 pip loss, you will now take a 13 pip profit. So it's simply locked in profit, hence the name Profit Lock 1. The magic number, you don't need to touch that. That's just how the software recognises the trades that it's taken out itself, as opposed to trades taken out by another EA or a manual trade. You can change that number if you want. It really doesn't matter. It won't make any difference to how the software operates. Profit Lock 2 and second Profit Lock, exactly the same as the Profit Lock 1s, except that this one is going to kick in when we're 90 pips of profit, and it's going to move the stop loss into 45 pips of profit. Maximum spread allowed. For all the Forex pairs, you can leave the default at 30. On gold, if you decide you want to trade gold, gold is one of the pairs that you'll have optimized access, optimized settings. Gold is one of the pairs that you will have access to optimized settings for if you're in our paid community. But yeah, things like gold, crypto, and indices, the max spread allowed will have to be changed. What you need to change it to will depend on what broker you're using. Just let me give you an example. Okay, so how you would determine it is, let me stretch this out here. So in the Market Watch box of your MT4 platform, if you have a look at all the Euro, all the Forex pairs, Euro US, there's 6 pips of spread, 22, 9, 9, 8. So you can see they're all less than 30. So the idea of the max spread allowed is just to stop the software from taking out trades when that spread's too large. If the spread's too large, then the market's going to have to move a lot further for you to take the preset profits that you're aiming for. For example, when the market first opens every day, and particularly when it opens at the start of the trading week, the spreads can be, like really excessive. So instead of pound yen being 24, it might be 150 or 200, So you don't want to be taking out trades when that happens, because it's just going to suck all the profit out of the trade. It's as simple as that. So that's all max spread allowed is for. But let's have a look at DJ30. That's just how this broker defines the US 30. The spread is 350. So you need to make it a little bit larger than that. So you need to work out the maximum spread that, in this case, US 30 has during the day. So not at the open of the morning, but just the average spread from most times during the day. And what we're looking at now is usually the average for this broker. So what I have on my DJ30, US 30 pair on this broker, I have my spread set at 500. That's because it does get up to sort of 480 sometimes, but of a morning in that it can be even more excessive. Gold, the spread here is 150. So for me personally, I would have a look at that, and I'd probably go with about 200. Like, you don't want to have to watch it all day to see what the average is, but what I'd suggest is when you're setting it up, if you have a look at what the spread is, like, you don't want to have a look at the spread within the first 2 hours of the market opening each morning, but at any other time of the day, have a look at what the spread is there. And as we've seen, it's been between 150 and 200. So I would say make your max spread allowed 250, 300 if you want to be safe. And then you can keep an eye on it whenever you're looking at your trading. And if it does tend to get above the setting that you've put in there regularly, then you might want to just up your setting a little bit. And as we can see, Bitcoin on this broker at the moment, it's 100, 120. Just as for a bit of a comparison, Bitcoin on a lot of brokers is 3,000. Now, that doesn't mean the spread's actually larger. That's just the way they're calculating it and displaying it based on a few different factors that make brokers with, precious metals, crypto and indices. It just means that they vary. They quite often do and can vary greatly between broker to broker. Forex pairs, they'll be uniform no matter what broker you're using. So, yeah, as I said, leave the max spread allowed at 30 for all your Forex pairs, but, for your indices and that, you'll have to just check for yourself depending on your broker and work that out. MA trend, you may or may not have that on your version of the software. That's something you don't need to touch. I know the latest version I put out, you don't have access to that setting anyway. That's just how the software is determining the various different trends that the market's making at the time. Max trades allowed. Okay, just to clarify, Trend Trader cannot take more than one trade at any one time on one pair. So at the moment, we're on pound yen and we have a trade open. It doesn't matter what the market does, this software cannot open up a second trade on this chart. Okay, that's just how it's hardwired in. I have to wait for this trade to play out, either good or bad, and then it can look for another entry. But it can't have two going at any one time. So what the max trade setting's for is to allow you to trade a whole heap of different pairs. And at what have I got here at the moment? Oops. Hang on a moment while I sort that. Okay. Yeah, so what the max trade setting's for is to allow you to trade a whole heap of, have the software on a whole heap of different pairs. And at the moment, what have we got here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's 10 pairs that I'm currently using that I have Trend Trader on this account. So I've got, a lot of pairs that it's looking at, but at no time will it be able to trade on more than 5 at any one time. So that just allows me to have a lot more pairs for the software to find good entries on, but also it ensures that, I don't want 10 trades to be open at once, because if I was running 2% risk and I had 10 trades open, that's potentially a 20% loss that I could take. So that's just to minimise how many trades can potentially be open. 5 is the default. You could make it less if you like. Although I've never personally had more than 4 trades open at any one time. So I've never really even had need for that max trade setting. Okay, now getting on to these new settings. And these are the 2 settings that weren't in the previous settings video. Is partial close and partial close amount. Okay, so partial close and partial close amount, those 2 work together, similar to how the profit lock, there's 2 settings that work together. So partial close, it's set at 40 pips. So what's going to happen is when this trade gets into 40 pips of profit, it's going to close out 0.01 of your trade. So my pound yen trade is 0.06. So when it gets into 40 pips of profit, it will close out 0.01. And then I'll only have 0.05 left here. And then the same will happen again for partial close 2. When it gets into 80 pips of profit, it'll close out another 0.01. So that's how they work. Now the settings, the optimized settings, the mental health settings, the other settings that we have, they don't really, well, they don't at all. They don't mention where you should have the partial close amount set at. That is because I don't really have optimized settings for partial closes. They don't make a lot of difference to the overall profit. Okay, on a couple of pairs, it can make it averaged out over 6 months of back testing. It can improve the profit slightly. but not enough to be really worth talking about. What it does do, though, is it gives you more regular medium-sized profits getting closed out and increasing your balance regularly during the week. Instead of just having, lots of little profits that hit the first profit lock and then the odd big one where it goes right through to take profit, instead of just having little ones and the odd big one, you'll get a lot more medium-sized profits as, portions of the trade get closed out at either 40 and 80. Okay, so even though I don't have specific settings that I recommend you have these on, what I personally like to do is I like to have my first partial close activate at either the same distance as my first profit lock or just after. So in this case, I have my partial close set exactly the same as my first profit lock. So when I hit my first profit lock, it's going to move the stop loss up to 13 pips of profit, and it's also going to close out 0.01 lot size of that trade. Okay, so either on or just after the first profit lock. Second profit lock, either just before or just after the second profit lock. Okay, in this case, I've got just before. What you don't want to do is you don't want to close out too much of your trade with the partial closes, because the more of the trade you close out early, the less you're going to have open if that trade goes right through to your take profit. Okay, so if you've got anything less than 0.04 lot size, you probably don't want to use the partial close features at all anyway. So you can just set them to 0, just like that. And now it's going to close out 0. So in other words, it's not working. And if you've got, at 0.04, you might just want to use the first partial close and put the second one at 0, so you're not using it. If you're using a much larger lot size, then you might want to close out 0.01 here, 0.02 here, or 0.02 here and 0.03 here, depending on how large your trade is. But unless you're getting up, I don't know, 0.15 or more, I would just not close out any more than 0.01 on the partials. Otherwise, you're just closing out too much of your trade too early, and those odd, really big profits that you make are going to be smaller. All right, so that's about it. That's all the settings, guys. Just quickly on the common tab here. You don't need anything checked except for allow live trading. If you want to have alerts, have that ticked, but you don't need anything over here ticked at all. That's just, those two are ticked by default. You just need to make sure allow live trading is ticked, and that's it. Let me just share one more thing with you. Okay, this is what I wanted to share. These are just the mental health settings. So generally, I'll send this picture as well to you, via email when you purchase the software. It'll be as soon as you supply your account number so that I can generate your activation key. You'll also receive this picture as well, but it's in this video now as well, so you can't miss it. These are the getting started settings, which we're calling mental health settings. Can only just see it, but that's fine. And this is how everything's written down. You don't have to use 2% risk, but these other settings for these pairs, they show the very least amount of losses in backtesting over 6 months. So these particular backtesting results are from July to December last year, 2022. And in 6 months of trading, Euro USD takes out 26 trades and only loses one of them. Euro JPY takes out 29 trades and only loses one. USD JPY loses 2. Pound yen loses 1. US 30 loses 2. But like, this is a phenomenal win rate. Honestly, I've never seen anything like it. US 30 is something that people consider quite volatile and hard to trade. It takes out 62 trades and only loses 2 of them. And so 2 losses is is the worst performing pair. 2 losses, 2 losses. The rest are only 1. So that's over 6 months. So even on this one here, that means it only takes a loss once every 2 months on US 30. So over 6 months on these 5 pairs, that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 losses all up in 6 months. So that's just over 1 loss per month. Every other trade's a winner. And obviously, past performance can't guarantee future results and all of that, but I will be regularly doing extensive back testing and updating the optimized settings, and I'm due to bring that out. Like right now, as I talk, it's the 16th of March. Before the end of March, I will be bringing out a whole new set of optimized settings, particularly for the mental health one. I have already changed in this picture. Pound yen is already different, possibly different to the pound yen settings you're currently using, because I have just updated this one not long ago. But I've done some little tweaks to the others and just finishing off some back testing, and I'll release them as well. So the idea there is that every 2 to 3 months, 3 months at the latest, I'm going to do extensive back testing on the most recent 6 months. So these settings now are from July to December last year. The next lot that I release will be from September to March, the end of September to the end of March. So the most recent 6 months, just so the settings are optimized for the most recent market conditions. That's the best you can do, basically. But all settings, doesn't matter what you're doing with an EA, they will need, tweaking, re-optimizing regularly to keep your finger on the pulse, because markets change from time to time. That's why I just do the most recent 6 months. I have back tested Trend Trader for the last 3 and 4, might have even done 5 years. And it still comes out in profit, but there are some years where it's not so good on these settings. But I can tweak it to suit what happened in those years as well. But my theory is that what the market was doing 5 years ago doesn't necessarily have any bearing on how the market's moving today. Markets change, so the EA needs to change as well. And it changes by us tweaking these optimized settings. So those that are in the paid community, the optimized settings, you just get them every 2 to 3 months. That's one of the benefits of being in the paid community. Whenever I improve the software, bring out a newer version, that's free for the community members. At the moment, you don't have to be a community member if you just want to purchase the software, and you'll get these 5 mental health pair settings and just do your own thing. That's more than fine by me. But if you're doing that, be aware that you should be doing some back testing yourself and making sure these optimized settings still suit current market conditions. So while these settings now are quite good, 6 months from now, we'll have probably changed these a couple of times. So they could be, slightly to significantly different settings. So if you're doing it all on your own, I definitely suggest becoming familiar with back testing and just regularly check them, tweak some settings, see how that back tests. And, it's easy enough to do. It is a little time consuming, but it's easy enough to do. And you can just make sure that your settings that you're using are constantly optimized for, the most recent market. Or if you don't want that time constraint, we have the paid community. Jump in on board of that. And then you probably know all the other benefits of being a community member as well. Honestly, at some stage in the future, I think becoming a community member will become compulsory, because, those that are in the community are using the software more effectively, not only because they're getting the optimized settings and more pairs, but also because they're interacting with the community and seeing exactly what strategy and settings and pairs they're using and what results they're getting. Already, even though we're only a couple of months into using Trend Trader, I definitely notice those in the community are doing better. Everyone's doing good because it's rarely losing. Actually, this week, right now, is the first week where we've taken any losses. Up until then, we'd had about 4.5 weeks with 0 losses on these mental health settings. Can't say that anymore. We did take a loss in US 30 early this week. All right, that's it, guys. Any questions, obviously, just ask, and I'll talk to you all later.